Hey everybody, welcome to Stone and Straw. This is episode number 1. I am so thrilled to be here. It has been a long journey up to this point. I'm your host, John Cullen, at Cullen the Curler on Twitter. You can follow the podcast on Twitter too, at Stone Straw Pod. This podcast, as always, is brought to you by CurlingZone. It's been quite a journey. This podcast in particular, I'm not going to talk about all the podcasts as a whole. I don't think I need to do that yet. You're going to see what's coming up, and it's going to be great. Like I said in my teaser episode, these episodes are going to be coming out every Tuesday for the next 6 weeks. Then we'll take a break in December for Christmas. Then we'll come back in January with another 6 to 8 episodes for your listening pleasure. This first episode was a real pleasure to do. I sat down with John Morris. And the fun part about doing this podcast and about traveling around across the country to do it is that every episode is going to have a story, and I kind of like that. It's going to be a big challenge for me to get all of these done, but this is obviously going to be something that's going to become a part of my summer, and that's traveling around to make these podcasts happen. And this story is pretty incredible. So John is a longtime visitor of Sooke, BC. That is actually how he got his start curling in BC, as he famously worked in Sooke during the 2013 season. So he was eligible to play for our province at the Brier. Not that that's something I ever think about, but he loved it so much that him and his new wife, Maggie, and his new baby, Jack, just bought a trailer there. So he's been going to this marina in Sooke for a really long time. Jody Epp, a curler from BC, is from there and has a fishing business there. So John got to know Sooke really well, got to know a bunch of the people out there, and he talks a little bit about that at the start of the podcast, but it was pretty awesome. I got on a ferry. It was a Monday in August, went across the ocean, had a drive into Sooke. Sooke's a little over an hour from the ferry, and just went into Beecher Bay Marina there. It's no cell reception, and he's got a beautiful trailer, brand new baby boy. We had these homemade ice cream sandwiches from a random ice cream sandwich place in Sooke, and it was just an awesome interview. We were able to sit on a deck that was overlooking the water, so it was incredibly peaceful. And I think you get the sense of that listening to this interview. John was super relaxed. He was very forthcoming. We had a lot to talk about. I really loved especially what he said about this past season. Obviously, he played out of BC again, and so I've gotten to know him quite well over the last couple of years, and it was really interesting to hear his take on how things went this year in BC. And he touches on a lot of stuff across his career, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, because you're just about to listen to the episode. Before we get to that, I just do want to thank Graham Wright of Tokyo Police Club for that amazing theme song that you heard off the beginning of the show. I've already got a lot of great feedback about it. Speaking of feedback, I got a lot of great feedback just about the teaser for this episode. So thanks to everybody who's been sharing it out. And if you can do that with this episode too, remember you can follow me on Twitter at Stone Straw Pod, at Cullen the Curler. Subscribe, download, tell your friends. I think this podcast is going to be really something special, something that hasn't been seen before. As I said before, there's so many amazing curling podcasts doing great things, and I'm just hoping to fit in with the rest of them. Thank you so much for listening. And without any further rambling from me, let's get to the very first episode. This is John Morris. This episode of Stone and Straw is brought to you in part by Dynasty Curling. Dynasty Curling is a Canadian company that has been around since 2015 at changing the landscape of curling apparel, both on and off the ice. And my team uses Dynasty. We're repping the Dynasty clothes out there. They're super comfortable, super nice, and we're not the only ones who use them. Obviously, Olympic and world champions, Team Jennifer Jones, Team Chelsea Carey, Team Gushu, Team Adine, Team Kody, and many more. If you follow them on Twitter at Dynasty Curling, you can see their insanely good roster. But what a lot of people probably don't know is that Dynasty also creates a lot of curling products for off the ice as well. It could be hats and hoodies that just have the Dynasty logo on it, which look great. They have gear to support your favorite team or your favorite province at the Brier or the Scotties. And they also have workout gear, which is really cool too. So you should obviously check them out, and especially check out that apparel. You probably didn't know. You probably just think, oh, it's only this sublimated curling gear I see on the ice. No, they have awesome off-ice stuff, and because they're really sweet, they have a deal just for you for listening to this podcast. If you use the promo code StoneStraw at checkout, you'll get 10% off your any purchase you make of Dynasty off-ice apparel. So that's pretty amazing. So head on over to dynastycurling.com, enter in the promo code StoneStraw, and you'll get 10% off your order of Dynasty off-ice apparel. And if you live in Winnipeg, they just opened a retail store, so you can check that out at the Granite Club in Winnipeg, or check them out online at Dynasty Curling on Twitter, Instagram, or dynastycurling.com. Here in Sooke, my first interview, this is a beauty spot. Tell me about where we are right now, John.
We're at the Beecher Bay Marina in beautiful, just outside Sooke, BC. And this is a place I've been coming to for about the last 10 years. That's one of the great things about curling. You meet some great people. And I met Jody Epp out here and Don Sheldrick at the Bear Mountain Classic about a decade ago. And we quickly found out over a few beers at the beer gardens that we love to fish. We had something in common there, so he very nicely introduced me to this place, and we recently just bought a little spot out here. So it's nothing crazy, nothing like a mansion on the water, but to me this is paradise, and love to fish and love being around great people. So this is that to me.
Yeah, this is a beauty spot. I have never been to this area of Sooke before. I was saying that to you when I got here, and it was very confusing getting here. but you did it. So you actually bought a place here.
Yeah,
you've been coming here for a while.
It's pretty much a glorified like trailer park, but it's seasonal, and it's just all people that love to fish and have nice. They're either old retired folks that love to fish, or else they're nice young families that like to get out here for the weekend. So it's nice. There's no data, cellular data.
Yeah.
So you're running on when you're out here. Yeah, you're off the grid, and it's kind of nice because life sometimes gets a little bit hectic, and so this is our first time out here, the first vacation out of this summer. So it's just a really nice, relaxing treat. And I think Jack was in his first fishing derby. There's a kids' fishing derby here last Saturday. So he was entered as a 4-month-old, and he came second with this like pretty decent sized crab he caught. So
he did well. So he's picking up on his dad's skills early on.
Yeah, hopefully he's going to find a love for fishing too. So we'll see.
That's nice. Yeah. So you say we, and you just got married. How's that, man? How'd that happen?
Well, yeah, every as my old buddy Randy Furby would say, every blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. So, but no, just a few weeks ago, got married to my beautiful wife Maggie.
Yep.
And I met her at chef school about 3 years ago in New York City when I took a few months off to go do that, and then we both have share a lot of great interests, developed a great friendship, and now we're happily married ever after, and we got a great little boy with us as well. So it's a nice start to a great family.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, because I was going to say I feel like that kind of came out of nowhere for everyone. Like I feel like you're at the Olympics, you're in the spotlight. And someone just sort of picked up that, you come home from the Olympics, you got a lady there, she's pregnant. It just sort of felt like it just sort of came out of nowhere for everyone. Was that sort of by design, or was that just kind of how it worked out? Or
well, this is what you got to know about me, which I'm not sure, probably don't know this enough about me yet, but I'm very, I like to keep my private life private.
Fair enough.
And I learned early, especially when I moved out to Alberta early, that it's nice to have friends in the curling circle, but I like to have a lot of balance in my life, and I find that by having a lot of other friends that aren't curlers, it creates a lot of that balance. And when I'm not curling, I like to go home and talk about anything else but curling, essentially. So yeah, I like to keep my private life pretty private, and that's why if every time I'm in a relationship, or if things are happening in my family, it's something usually between us. And I learned that a little bit from some athletes I look up to. Like I find there's like Sidney Crosby, for example. I find he's one of the best hockey players in the world, and you never hear a lot about him when he's not on the ice. And I think that's a good way to be, because I find that only can create drama. That's again, he's an athlete I really look up to, and I think he's doing it the right way. And I try to sort of, be similar, I guess, in that aspect.
Kind of same thing with him. He wasn't it like 2 years ago when the Pens won the cup, and then all of a sudden he had a girlfriend on the ice, and everyone was like, "What the hell's going on?" He said he's got a girlfriend, and that's nice. No, I think that's cool. I mean, I thought it was also fun that the first interview where you really talked about it was in French. I didn't know that you had the old Francais skills there, Johnny.
No, they're rusty at best, but I grew up in Ottawa, and it's a pretty bilingual city, and I don't mind speaking French. It's something when I was younger. I think when you're younger in your career, especially, and you get asked to do an interview in a language you're not really comfortable in, you're kind of nervous and you don't want to do it. But when you get older, and I think that Quebec and the French language is a big part of our country. So, and there's not enough of curling in French. So if I can help with that, and it's something I felt more comfortable as my career has gone on. And even though my French is pretty basic and suspect at best, I don't mind trying my hand at it in interviews, and I'm sure French Canadians get a good chuckle when they hear my interviews, because there's a lot of franglais in there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm not saying that based on you. I'm saying that would be the same for me. It would be, because that's the thing too, is like, I'm sure growing up in Ottawa and being in Quebec, if you speak French wrong, that's definitely something French people like to tell you about. Like they'll correct you immediately. Like I feel like as a native English speaker, if you kind of speak incorrectly, or you say something, you use a word maybe you shouldn't have used, or you conjugate a verb wrong, people kind of whatever, But if you say a French thing wrong, there's not a lot of tolerance for that.
It's interesting, because I find the Parisian French, for sure, if they're pretty staunch when it comes to their language. But I find with Quebec, especially when I'm giving it a good effort in an interview and other people are hearing that, and I'll even apologize. I'll say, sorry, I'm sure I got some grammar wrong there. And they're like, hey, we thought it was awesome. Thanks for the effort. And so I think that's something that might be more the Parisian French as far as the French Canadian, as far as my experience so far.
Sure. Yeah. And I do agree. I think in this country, part of it has to do with that language divide, right? It's like the people that appreciate that you're making the effort to say like, hey, this is a bilingual country. I'm trying my best. Yeah. I always love that about, we were talking hockey, like Jonathan Toews is like fluent in French. So it's he grew up, his mom's French. So he's like actually like legit, like has a proper French accent, like completely French.
I've never heard him speak before.
Yeah, if you ever, you can YouTube Jonathan Toews French, and he'll like especially when Chicago was in the Stanley Cup, like you could find him doing interviews with RDS and all that stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's a very good French speaker. So I'm sure, like you say, it's part of that appreciating the effort from an Olympian, being like, who people know French is not your first language, making that effort, I'm sure.
What was a challenge though was at the Olympics, I did an interview in Spanish.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was cool. I thought it was really cool that there was, I think it was Mexico, and they were covering curling at the Olympics.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot here, because I'm never going to hear this interview, and I think it'll be pretty funny. And you know what, Spanish is derived from the French language, or vice versa, wherever it is. So I gave it a go.
Romance languages, John.
Yeah, there you go.
And have you spoken Spanish before, or this was just your best guess? It was French with a Spanish accent.
Well, you know what's funny? The only subject I've ever failed in school was Spanish.
Oh, okay.
I got a 49 in Spanish in grade 9. And but I still enjoy, like when I've been on a few trips to Mexico, I try my best to speak the native tongue as much as I can, but it's always a pretty laughable. But no, had a good time with that interview and at the Olympics, and something I don't mind doing stuff like that.
Nice. Okay, well, in this Stone and Straw pod, with most of my guests, I kind of want to run through their career a little bit, and certainly you've had an incredibly storied career, I would say, a long career. And I just want to know, I'm going to start every episode with the same question, which is just, how did you get started? What did the start of John Morris's curling career look like?
Well, our family was very sports oriented. One of the great things my parents did was just get us started in many sports growing up. But my dad had a lot of curling in his blood. His grandpa, he was raised by his grandpa. He never met his dad. And his grandpa was a curler out of Rosser in Saskatchewan. And so that's who got him started. And I think it was pretty important for my dad to at least attempt at trying curling with his kids. So I started when I was 5 years old. I can remember being at the Navy Curling Club, and my dad threw me down the ice on a set of 2 stones, and I thought it was pretty cool. And then I joined a Little Rock league, I think the next year, and then
and you were incredibly disappointed when they wouldn't let you ride the stones.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, what's up? I thought this was the curling here, but no. Actually, that's ironically when I first started playing. One of the first guys I played with was Mark Holman.
Oh, okay.
Rachel Holman's brother.
Yeah.
And no one has ever heard of Mark Holman. They've always heard of Rachel Holman, but he was a heck of a curler, and he ended up giving it up early.
He made kind of a comeback. He was in Ontario Provincials a couple of years ago, I think.
You betcha, yeah. But I remember he quit to play hockey because he was a pretty good goaltender too. And I remember I'm like, man, he was one of the best players on our team. I'm like, darn it, we just lost a great player. And then I remember growing up, Rachel was always a rink rat at the rink. She was, quite a bit younger than us, and she would always be around and complaining that like, oh, why do we have to hang around the curling rinks again, eh? And then I'm like, Rachel, you're going to curl one day. And she's like, no, I'm never going to curl. So it's interesting.
And now here we are. She probably wishes she never started. No, I'm just kidding. What about, is that something that you see passing on to Jack as well, curling, or is that you don't?
I'll never, I think one mistake I've seen with parents is that they really try to maybe force some sports onto their kids. And, I think that's something that should be natural. It should be something that the intention should first and foremost be participation and fun and activity, and getting them out from the TV or their computer screen. So I think that just getting Jack out, my goal is to introduce him to as many new things and fun things as possible, outdoor sports, fishing, hiking, any type of sports that he seems interested in, and see which ones sort of really work with him. That's something my parents did with me, and especially my dad really did that with us. And we just sort of, we're drawn to the sports that we were maybe a little better at and had friends playing, and it seemed to work for myself and my 2 sisters because we all played different sports and we all had a lot of fun doing it, and I don't think any of us would have changed any of that.
Yeah, that's nice. And so as far as curling goes, you had a lot of success pretty early. You won 2 World Juniors. Did that kind of shape your expectations when you got into men's curling? Because you're obviously, well-known junior curler. You had a lot going for you, and you came out of Ontario, so a lot of people tend to know Ontario curlers, what's going on. Was that something that you thought about, or was that something that sort of set your expectations? Because I feel like especially now, juniors are getting better and better and better all the time. I mean, you look at Bruce Mowat's like already one of the top men's teams, and Tyler Tardy, I think, is going to be great. So was that something that you thought about, that bothered you, or not bothered you, but that you had to think about when you came out of the 2 World Juniors? Or did you kind of think, okay, this is a new game now and I got to build my way back up?
Well, 2 things that sort of resonate with me there. One is that, ever since I was young, one of the great things my dad did was he enrolled us, and this is when I was playing with Craig Saville in juniors. I think we started when we were 13, and he had us playing in men's leagues. There was pretty good junior competition around there, but I think he realized at an early age we had something different. And as much as we got some great junior competition from Ontario, because there was lots, but in Ottawa specifically, he enrolled us in a men's league, and that's where. And I always, I don't know what it was, but I always liked that challenge, and I felt like I just loved beating guys that were 3 times our age and that had been curling for 20, 30 years, and I remember at the Navy Curling Club. We were these 14-year-old guys and 14 and 15-year-old team, and we would play against men's teams, and they had this sectioned off area that only if you're of drinking age you could go in after the games. So we would be playing in this league, and pretty soon after playing this league, we'd start beating these men's teams, and the tradition is having a drink with the team after the game. but they wouldn't let us in the area. So we're over playing shuffleboard and having a great old time, and they were just stewing in their seats because these 14-year-olds just beat them at curling. So I think we were, after the first year, we were number 1 or 2 in the league, and that's one thing I think that really helped us get a jump above a lot of other junior teams, but also made me specifically want to play in men's and beat men's teams early. I was, and it made us, have a great junior career because we were able to win two World Junior Championships, but it also helped with that transition because by the time I was aging out of juniors, we'd already played on the men's curling tour for a few years, and we were, I think, our second and our last year junior, we would have been at least top 20 on the WCT, and so that that felt like, hey, we can hold our own in the men's ranks, and the only challenge which was next, which was a major challenge for many kids, is that jump going into university and trying to balance all your studies and this newfound life of university life and trying to maintain a really competitive edge and competing at a high level at a sport.
And so how did you do that?
Well, I researched in my last few years of juniors, I met Brent Lang and we ended up playing together, and he was a big influence on me. I felt how great of a player he was and a great knowledge of the game, but he also went to Wilfrid Laurier University 1 year before me, and he mentioned, he goes, this university is awesome. It's small. They don't treat you like a number. They're great with athletics. So if you need to go and compete, they're really good at working around that. And so it really intrigued me that, because I went to a pretty small high school, that there's a university that might be similar to that. And so I looked into it and went for a few interviews and was able to get a scholarship there. And that was one of the best things that I ever did, because at the time, university curling isn't what it is today.
No, yeah.
There's no CIS. There's no World University Games. There was OUAs. So there wasn't a lot of motivation for the school to register young curlers, because there wasn't a big program. So the fact that they had faith in me and they offered me, I got offered a scholarship through the Petro-Canada Olympic Torch at the time. So, that was able to help. And also the combination of going with Wilfrid Laurier, which I still think is one of the best universities out there, and really helped me through that transition in the men's ranks.
Do you think that that's, pardon me, going to change? Because I think that the way the sport's going now, it feels like that's almost not going to be possible. If you want to make the transition from a successful junior team to a successful men's team, it almost seems like it's going to be really difficult to do university at the same time. Do you think that is true, or that's going to change? Like you see, like Mary Fay, for example, wins the Worlds, wins the Youth Olympics, quits curling because she wants to prioritize her studies. Do you think there's still going to be room for both, or is that something that's going to have to change as curling continues to increase its athletic profile?
Well, I think that education is pretty vital. Like what I learned at university, especially living away from home for the first time, was something I recommend every young kid going through. But it might impact your chances of going to the Olympics when you're 20 or early 20s.
Right.
Because, you have to be at the top of your game and but I think that it's really tough regardless, even if you quit school, to compete and be like, I think it'd be almost impossible to get the Olympics that young in your career anyway, because of how much you need to learn in the game. So I would say that it wouldn't be that wise for, I took a year off. It wasn't like that was back when they had OUA, or they had, what's it called? OAC, which is your grade 13 back in Ontario. And then I took a year off after that to upgrade my marks a little bit and to go to the Worlds. So by the time I started university, I was almost 20 years old. It was great. Right. I felt like, I actually, was mature enough at the time as a 20-year-old rather than an 18-year-old. Like those 2 years were pretty vital to sort of grow and be ready for university. But I think that you can still compete at a high level and go to university, especially if you're whichever university or college you choose, understands that, this is also a priority for you and can work with you. But I think that it's important to get that education. And I think you can still compete at a high level. You might not be able to play every weekend on tour and be trying to be the number one CTRS or CT order or merit points. That would be tough. But I still think you can maintain a really high position. You can really develop your skills still and play enough to be a pretty major contender. I don't think it's changed enough to do that. I hope it never does, because I think it's important. That's a pretty important time in your life, and I would hate for I would have had to choose either time to curl full time or go to school and quit curling and then maybe come back into it, because it would have been too much pressure on a youngster at that age, and I don't even know if I would have been able to have done that I've done if I didn't have that experience in university.
For sure. So we're going to skip ahead now a little bit to obviously probably the team you're most famous for playing with Kevin Martin. And I was just curious, because I know, I'm sure you've talked a lot about the team before, but I really wanted to get into how that comes together. Like how did you and Kevin decide, first of all, to play together, and then second of all, how that team is going to look on the ice? Because I feel like, Kevin's older, he's got that experience, you're younger, you're one of the better, if not the best player under 30 in Canada at the time. How does that even come together, and how do you guys decide, okay, this is how we're going to prioritize things on the ice, this is how we're going to do things? Like, I'm sure those early discussions as a team, would have been fascinating, because I feel like a lot of times you talk about how after your success, but how did that look like in the beginning? What was the genesis of that like?
Well, this is how it came together, essentially, from my best recollection.
Yeah, it's been a few years now,
but it's pretty clear. I had a good junior career, and in the men's ranks, I'd say I had a pretty successful men's tenure. We weren't the best team in the world by any means, but I'd always sort of chosen some playing with some friends and maybe didn't work as hard as I needed to outside of juniors. And as a result, I was knocking at the door. I was always, I think our team was always top 5-ish in the world. But we were never number one. And I think it came a point, I think I was, mid 25, 27, around then where I remember pretty much taking a look in the mirror and saying, you won 2 World Junior Championships, but what have you done lately? You've been close, you've won some WC events, you want to but I just didn't like that. I didn't like not being the best in the world. I didn't like being, I felt like there was more for me. And what was really irking me too was that we were getting spanked by Randy Ferbey. And
this is when you're playing with Kevin.
This one I was with Kevin Cooey, Mark Kennedy, and Paul, my good buddy Paul Moffat.
Yeah.
And again, we were good. We probably had a 700 winning percentage around there, maybe. But we would always get beat by Randy Ferbey, so we'd never be at the Briar. We'd never win world championships. And it's funny because Ferbey and Marcel, both those guys, we were really good friends with. But it kept beating, and it was driving me nuts. And I felt like, you know what? That's it. I've had enough. I've had enough getting beaten by Randy Ferbey. I think it was like 17-1 against me in those 3 or 4 years. So I remember being at the Canada Cup in Kamloops and having a conversation in the lounge with Kevin Martin. And I remember, looking at Kevin. It was just the 2 of us. A lot of other people, there was a band playing or something. And I said, you know what, Kev? I said, I think it's time we teamed up. Along those lines. I don't know who said what first, but it was along those lines where it was like, because Kevin, I think, was obviously one of the best men's teams going, but he wasn't, I don't think, at the, Randy Ferbey was sort of the team.
Yeah, he had kind of fallen down a bit after 2002. And,
yeah. And you could tell, like Donnie Walchuk, again, one of my favorite players of all time, and Donnie Bartlett, was having back problems. So you could tell there was some seams that were sort of falling apart there. And so I said, Kevin, I think it's time we put a team together. I'm sick of losing to Ferbey, and I want to be the best. I want to be part of the best team in the world. And he was reciprocal. He received it well, and he said, well, he looked at me and said, well, who do you think of playing with? Who do you think would be on our team? And I said, Well, I said, probably Carter or Mark at second. And not sure, we didn't know about lead. We didn't have anyone in mind. So then after the Olympic trials, and we sort of put that on hold because, Olympic trials and you're built for the Olympic years and, for those cycles. So after the Olympic trials this is interesting. I don't think not too many people know this, but after the Olympic trials in 2005, we came really close. We had a great trial. We were probably the 7th ranked team going in, 6th or 7th ranked team going in. And we almost won it, but we came 3rd. And then after those trials, I didn't really have a career in place yet. I was volunteering as a firefighter and didn't really have a career in place. So I wanted to go back to Ontario to get my 1-year teacher's college. Because in Alberta it was 2 years and it was still only 1 year in Ontario. I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll go get my teacher's college, become a teacher somewhere and maybe
join me.
Yeah, get back into curling, yeah. So what happened was I was going to be playing out of going back to Ottawa or Queens. Actually, I got into Queens. I'd actually applied and gotten in, miracle. and I was good friends with Johnny Mead at the time, and I think he was done with Stoughton, and we had talked about playing together, Johnny Mead and myself, and we're going to play. I don't know what province we would have really played out of yet, and I think Mark Kennedy was involved in that, and then Kevin called, and we got talking, and I was quite prepared to, because we hadn't really talked since that one time in Kamloops a year or two ago, and he goes, okay, well, what's the plan, or what are we doing this or what? And I remember, so I said, okay, well, I just got into teacher's college, and it took me a while. It took me about a month to sort of figure out what was going to happen, and I remember that conversation about the team and, okay, who do we want to put together in this? So, and 1 or 2 years ago, it was neck and neck with Mark and Carter, and I felt like, because Mark came from a background where I remember playing him in juniors, so we had a pretty heated junior rivalry, even though we were good friends, but we still wanted to kick each other's butt out there for being from Ontario and Alberta. And he was a banger. He was definitely grew up banging and hitting. His dad was, like that. It was his coach, and that was sort of an Alberta thing, was hit first mentality, right? And when I played with him, he was one of the best hitters out there, and his finesse game was not really there. And we worked hard at I remember asking Mark once at practice, I said, what do you do for practice? He'd practice a lot in Edmonton on his own. And he'd be like, well, I do this. I throw some hack weight hits, and I throw some board weights, and I throw some peels, and then I throw some draws at the end. And I'm like, okay, that's the problem, is that 80% of your practice is hits, and you're a really good hitter, and your finesse game and your draw is what can use a bit of development. And so we worked at that, and I said, why don't we go 80% draws and hack weight hits and 20% hits in practice, and then so when we had that conversation a couple of years in when we were playing together, over those next few years, he developed into one of the best players going, and that's when Kevin and I started talking again, and he said, so are we getting Carter? And I said, well, Kev, I have to say, I think Mark Kennedy's a better player right now. And it's tough for me to say that because I love Carter Rycroft and I still think the world of him. But I think also when you've played at a high level like he did with Kevin, sometimes the motivation goes down a little bit. And he'd been at the peak. He'd been in the Olympics. He'd been, did everything in the game. And Mark was still an up-and-comer, and he's a really motivated guy. And I also know that from playing with Mark for 4 years, he was the best, if not tied for first, best teammate I've ever had. And those are some intangibles that you want to have on a team. You can't just have an all-star that's a really good shooter if he doesn't bring anything else. And Mark was really developing as a player. He was a heck of a great sweeper, and he was brought other factors like managerial factors to the team that I hadn't had in the past, and it really gave him such great credibility as a teammate. So I felt it was important that we got Mark Kennedy in the team, and Kevin was open to it. He was, I think that was one of the toughest conversations he's had with a teammate, was sitting down with Carter and let him know that we're going to go with Mark. And but that was, to me, that was a bit of a deal breaker because I knew what Mark brought, and I wanted that to be part of the team. And then at lead, we didn't really know. Loved Donnie B, again, one of my best friends in the game, but he was sort of at a stage in his career where he was winding down, and there was no other real natural fits for lead. And
you just didn't have a look at a 23-year-old John Cullen.
We didn't know
finishing 7th in British Columbia Provincials. You didn't.
You didn't make the radar.
Have your scouts out there, eh? Jeez.
No, unfortunately, but
devastating.
Not then, but now you might have been on the radar.
Okay.
So fast forward 10 years, but
yeah, I needed the development time.
But you know what? Ben Hebert was an up and comer. He was a really strong player. He was our 5th player at the trials. And what I really liked about Ben, there's 2 things. First of all, he really was great on the road. Like, he was just a really good teammate. He was very entertaining. I would say would be one of his best qualities. He can ease the tension. He's a great icebreaker, and also was what I didn't really realize at the time was how much of a competitor and how much of an athlete he was. And that was an intangible that was vital to that team. And we didn't know it at the time. It was pretty much a tryout for Benny. We said, I said to Kevin, because I think it was tough for Kevin to wrap his head around being with a brand new team of young guys that, like he felt like maybe he wanted an older guy on the team or someone more veteran savvy or some experience. So I know that was, so I talked about, I said, Kev, let's just try Benny out. And if he doesn't work, we can, this is sort of a tryout. And if it doesn't work, then we can look elsewhere after the time being. So we had a tryout, and Ben was, a great teammate. And I brought those, he was one of the best sweepers right off the get-go because how strong he was. But his mechanics needed work. And, and that's what Kevin was great for, is he pretty much, I remember a really blunt conversation. I'll never forget this practice. We were practicing somewhere in Edmonton before a big Grand Slam or something. And Kevin didn't like the way Ben slid. And this is probably 2 months into the season. And he goes, well, Ben, he goes, I think, because Ben used to slide with his broom on the ice. He goes, well, Ben, he goes, I think you should slide with your broom like me. Because I think you'll be more stable. And I remember Ben trying and almost falling down the first few times and him being really uncomfortable. And he goes, and I remember Kevin saying, well, either you do it and you get better or you don't and you're not going to be playing anymore on our team. Just like that, he said.
Just casually.
And Kevin, I think Ben turned white as a ghost and looked at us. We were sort of borderline breaking out in laughter and also are you serious?
Yeah.
So that was.
But he probably was serious.
He was, and that's sort of that was the business of Kevin playing with Kevin Martin.
Sure.
And I think that's one of the great things we learned from him, and he did improve, and especially his mechanics got better, and he turned into a fantastic teammate, and then he ended up bringing things we never saw to the table down the road. Like, he's probably one nowadays, after playing with Kevin Martin and Kevin Kody and really learning the business of curling, Ben Hebert is night and day a different player than he was that first year we played with him. And he's probably, you wouldn't even recognize Ben Hebert from then as he is now, besides the comical relief.
Of course, yeah. Well, it's funny that you say business, because that is actually a question that I had written down, is that it did feel like that whole team was kind of a business. Like, it felt at times like it was Kevin and the 3 of you, like that there was a bit of a divide there, almost sort of like a player-coach mentality. Obviously, the way you're speaking of it, you think that having that business side of it is important. Is there ever too much business? Like, did that team ever get to be too much business?
Well, you know what I have to say, because I like to focus on the positives. Right?
Yeah. So I'm not asking you to speak negatively.
No, I agree. But just one really positive thing I learned from playing with Kevin Martin, and I think we all learned, was the business of curling. Because at the time, before that, I played with mostly my friends or people I thought, and I wasn't able to get to where I wanted to get to in curling. And, curling is a sport where, you need sponsorship and you need to treat sponsors like they should be treated. And you also need to be professional. And so that's something that one of the greatest things I learned from Kevin. And I think that we all learned that, and we'll all, to this day, is something that, I think is vital, a vital skill to have when you're playing with a really competitive professional team, I guess. So, but with that being said, I think at the end of our tenure, because I've been, and when you say like the three of us, it was a business, I remember the first couple of years playing with Kevin, and we were dominant, like we were winning lots, and Kevin was tough on, it wasn't a secret. You can ask a lot of Kevin's previous teammates, and people that watch Kevin that know him well, he's tough on his teammates. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that being tough on your teammates, there's a line there, but as long as they can take it is something that you kind of, as a skip and a leader, you have to, and especially with us, we were young, we probably needed that, right? But we were always with the understanding of, okay, we're winning everything right now. Mark and Ben and I, went into it with a great friendship, and we were really good friends. Kevin and I, were out of mutual respect. I think we all had a mutual respect for Kevin, what he'd done in the game. But the three of us were, Mark and Ben and I were great friends. And when things like this happened with Ben on the ice, when Kev's saying, you got to change this or else probably not gonna be on the team much longer. And there was times when, we felt we were treated like, it was tough out there. It was certain times that when things weren't going well out there, I think all of us felt, really small out there. And Kevin sometimes had that ability to make you feel like that. But we really felt it was important for us to pull together and to have like, okay, you know what? This is Kevin's nature. He's going to say that. We can't take it personally or else it's going to just eat us up and we're not going to be able to perform as a team. So we had many conversations of, okay, you know what? Take this with a grain of salt.
And these are conversations without Kevin.
Yeah, essentially, like, and it wasn't behind his back to be purposely behind his back, but it was that conversations that we had to have for the proper development of our team,
right,
and the growth of us as players with Kevin. So we had these conversations. If this is how we're going to feel sometimes playing with Kevin, it's fine. We have to realize that we got to realize the bigger goal here, and the bigger goal here is winning the World Championships, winning the Olympics, being the best team in the world. Okay, and if it means we're going to get chirped out there a little bit, and who cares?
Right. Right?
What would we rather be? 10th in the world and being all best friends out there and all being, one happy family? Heck no. So that's how competitive we were, is we didn't mind feeling like that. And in all honesty, like, I'm sure there was times where I treated teammates and, maybe not Mark because he's one of the nicest guys ever, but Ben, I'm sure there's times in our career where we treated guys out there on the ice, teammates that, like we probably shouldn't have. And, but that's something that our mentality was, we're a rock, the three of us. We're going to make sure we get through this, and we're always going to have each other's back. And as long as Kevin Martin is making the shots that Kevin Martin's making, and he's playing and being the leader like that he can be on our team, then this is all good. This team, is money and magic, and we can rule the world. And we needed to see that bigger picture. And that's essentially, what was essentially how we played. And I think over the years we developed even more respect for Kevin and more of a friendship with him. And we started seeing it from his eyes, and we became a bit more businesslike. And one thing I really miss, probably the biggest thing I miss playing with Kevin Martin and that team, was sitting down in our hotel room at events, and Jules Ocher would often join us. One of the best coaches and best guys ever. And we'd be playing cards. We'd be watching sports. We all love sports. So we'd be watching sports highlights, playing cards, having a whiskey or a rum. And when I was doing that, it just seemed like it happened every weekend, right?
Yeah.
But looking back on it, we were on top of the world. We were crushing teams. We were having a great time. And I really miss that because we'll never get that back. And even the teams I've been on after that, as much as, we've never had that same bond where we all love playing cards. We all love watching sports and just that camaraderie. And I think that really helped develop our team and that's something that was pretty vital for Kevin. It was like, okay, we're not going to the bar. We're not going and chasing tail. We're not, we're going to go, for the most part, we're going to go back to the hotel room, or the rink and sit in the corner and play cards and sip on a whiskey and tell stories. And I really miss that. I have to say, if I could rewind 10 years and play one more year, I would just take it for, I really miss that. That's probably what I miss most about that team is those moments, because we had 4 great guys that, ruled the world, and I don't know if we knew exactly what we had at the time.
This episode is brought to you by Hardline Curling Supplies, and I'm happy that it is brought by Hardline Curling Supplies because I'm a Hardline Nation member. My team's been using Hardline for the last 5 years. We were onto Hardline products before they were even on Dragon's Den. Can you believe that? Ice Pad. It's the most technologically advanced brush on the market. You don't believe me? 7 of the top 9 men's teams and 10 of the top 15 women's teams in the world are all using this brush. Kevin Cooey, Brad Gushu, Nicholas Adine, Anna Hasselborg, Reed Carruthers, Chelsea Carey, Mike McEwen, the list goes on. And they're great for the rec curler too. Don't just think, oh, I club curl, it's not good enough for me. It's phenomenal for you. It helps with your shoulders. You can use it for over 100 games. When your head wears out, you just throw it in the wash and you can use it again. It saves you money. It helps the environment. And they got a lot of great products too. They've got the best pants. Are you one of those cold curlers who's always complaining about how you're cold? Well, guess what? They've got super comfy and warm pants. They've got great shoes, shirts, helmets, broom bags, whatever you need. And if you were looking for that best delivery aid on the planet, that's Reed Carruthers Pro Slide, which you can get exclusively from Hardline Curling. It's guaranteed for life. Your one-stop shop for all your curling needs. So visit Hardline at www.hardlinecurling.com or go to any one of the 120 Hardline retailers around the world and get your products today. Do you think that part of that is I think maybe the winning mentality is tied into that as well? Because I distinctly remember being a young curler, and I was only around you guys at the West Coast Classic often in New West. You guys were one of the first teams that did that kind of stuck together and that didn't hit the bar. Like you guys were one of the first teams where it was known that obviously you guys had the respect of everybody being one of the best teams in the world, but then it was also that it became noticeable that you guys were often not in the bar and not around. Do you think that is something that other teams began to emulate? Did you feel like you were kind of the start of that? Because I sort of feel like now in curling, that's the norm, is that teams are, once you're out, of course, you might go party.
Yeah.
And certainly there are some teams that they're never going to give that up. But I think, I remember distinctly you guys being one of the first teams to be like that. Yeah.
And I wouldn't say, I think the difference now is that a lot of teams, they'll go back to the hotel room and they'll sort of, I don't know if they don't hang out together as much. They'll go back and they'll do some social media, or they'll, 2 of them will be hanging out in one room and 2 in another room. Or it's rare I find that you'll get a team doing what we used to do. And it wasn't like it's not like we were saints. Like when we were qualifying A-side,
yeah,
we were still, we didn't play for another day or 2. And we were still having a good time, and we'd pick our spots. And that was, initially playing with Kevin, it was kind of tough because we came from the school of, like curling was still a bit, if there was a beer garden, we were at it, and if there's a social event, we'd probably go to it. So when we first started playing with Kevin, not doing that was a little tough on us as young guys, right? I think it was more important what we were doing, which was being together as a team, developing good bonds together, and now more teams, I guess, don't go out as much, but I don't think they're doing as much. Like, I don't think they're going home and playing cards as much. That's more of a older school tradition that I really, really miss in the game, because, growing up and playing with the likes of Neil Harrison and Al Hachter and Ed Wernick, and, sitting out, going to a bonspiel and doing that was good bonspieling, right? You'd play with a couple other teams and get a poker tournament going, or playing, and that's something I think that is missing in the professionalization of our sport. because there's so much on the line, and it's one of the reasons I don't mind leaving the game right now, because I miss that, and I think that that's something I really enjoyed in the game, and I find it's not there as much, and I don't think I would enjoy the game as much if I grew up in this era curling.
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, was there a time where you kind of, fell out of love with curling? I would say that, you had all these experiences and you played on a bunch of different teams, and you say that like the social side of the game was very important to you and you may not enjoy it as much. Like, was there a time where that kind of went away for you?
Well, I think, we always knew with this team, if we're winning, the sky was the limit. And, but I think it was a combination of two things what happened. And I'm speaking specifically to our last few years with that Kevin Martin team. One was that we'd been on top of the world, and as much as we would never admit at the time, and you'd never think at the time that we were getting complacent, I think it always creeps into your head, like, what's going to happen? What am I going to do for real life when curling's done? And so I was trying to develop a career firefighting. So I was trying to juggle a full-time fire career in curling, which was a challenge. And, but also, we weren't winning as much. I think it was a combination. Teams were getting a little bit better. And I felt we were one of the reasons that bar was set higher, and teams were realizing, okay, we got to get better here if we're going to compete with these guys. And they were starting to get better. And we were losing our edge a little bit. And with that team, it was always fun when we were winning, or for the most part, really fun when we were winning. But when we were losing, it was tough. And I think that, just for the factors I mentioned earlier, it was tough when we were losing because, more negativity was said, and it was just what I found was that last year or two is we weren't winning as much, and I felt like my passion for the game and my soul was not really there. Like I felt like we were in truth, and I think part of this was due to and again, Kevin Martin is one of the most resilient curlers I've met. There's times when you're in his career where you think like, okay, he's probably got a year or two left, and boom, he's back there, and like what he did with us after what he'd already done for so many years, and then went down a bit, and then boom, back up. Really, amazing that for him to be able to do that. That's why I think he's one of the best ever. But I found that with our team, let me regain my train of thought here. We were at that time. Kevin I remember he had an injury, a hernia injury, and in all honesty, he wasn't playing very well. Okay, and I wasn't playing very well either. I think during that time, that especially our last year together, maybe part of it was the year before too, is that for whatever reason, whatever mentality or psyche behind it, Kevin lost a bit of an edge at that time. Okay, he regained it, but he had an injury, but what was tough playing with Kevin is that you never really heard from Kevin. You know what, guys, I'm not really playing very well. He'd say that maybe the odd time, but a lot of times it felt like it was our fault, and
Right.
And that was tough, and especially when we're losing and we're seeing him miss shots that he's made before and made amazing shots for us to win, and they weren't happening, and then saying we got to do this better, we got to be better, and that was tough, and that ate away at you a bit, and personally, again, I'm not going to put any, this isn't a Kevin Martin was the only reason. I was losing my passion, and you probably know me just as much as most curling fans and curlers know me. If I'm going to play well there, I need to have an edge, and I didn't have an edge because I felt like, I don't know, it was a combination of our team was not playing as well, and I was losing a bit of my not my edge, I guess, my passion a bit, my soul, okay? And the only player that was really playing well for us still was Mark Kennedy. Mark Kennedy was just business as usual, our best player and our best teammate. And so after that last year, I felt like I felt like curling with Groundhog Day. Every spiel was, and I felt like my soul was not there. And my choices were to leave the team and leave curling, and there's 1 year left, before the Olympics, or I really felt, and I felt like I might have been a contributor to what was happening with Kev. Maybe because maybe we weren't jiving anymore. Maybe our team had reached its expiration date, and we needed something fresh. So I felt like, okay, we're not getting rid of Kevin. He's the skip of this team, and I don't think getting rid of Mark or Ben will make a difference. So I felt that in order for me to regain my soul and my mojo, I have to play with a new team, a new group. And I felt like also for this team, because I still cared for the guys and wanted to see them succeed, was if they brought someone fresh in at third, it would probably rejuvenate Kev and would give them a better chance to and in my mind, maybe I was dreaming in Technicolor, but I said, you know what? And that whole summer, I trained almost like I love to train, but that summer, I remember running, like I do a lot of visualization, and I was running and training, and I remember that summer visualizing, okay, this is my new team now, and we're gonna win the Olympic trials, and as tough as it's gonna be, we're gonna play Kevin Martin and my whole team in the final, and no one would have ever believed that if I said that, but I'm like, this is what's gonna happen, and
got pretty close.
Well,
semifinal.
That game happened in the semifinal.
Yeah,
and I don't know if I was mentally ready for that final because I had visioned playing those guys in the and what happened, after that, after our breakup, what happened is exactly what I thought would probably happen. Their team and Kevin's mojo was fired up again. At those trials, he was the best, in my mind, the best skip, if not tied for first place with Brad Jacobs. Brad Jacobs had the best full team there, and they had something to prove, and that's why they won those trials. But if you go down those positions, Kevin Martin was number one, if not tied for number one at those trials. And I felt, I don't know stats. I'm not a big stats guy, but I felt I was the best third there, if not tied. But I felt like I was back and was feeling it. And Mark Kennedy was, I'm sure he was number one as usual, and Ben was right up there as well. So yeah, it was exactly sort of how both parties ended up playing like they could again, which was nice to see in hindsight. I know we both would have wanted to win, but and who knows? Like, I don't regret anything. I have such a great respect for Jimmy Cotter. I've always wanted to play with him, and that was great that we were able to make that run. And but I've had some good conversations with Jules Ocher after it, and with Benny and Mark, and it would be interesting to see what would have happened if we had, during that conference call, rather than me saying, listen guys, it's time, actually that was the toughest call I've ever made in my life. It was a really, that was the toughest curling call I've ever been part of. But it would be really interesting to see what would have happened if instead of saying, guys, I need I'm done, I think this is for the best, saying, you know what, guys, we're obviously not feeling it right now. I think we need to take a break from each other, and let's take the summer off, recharge our batteries, come back with a really, try our best to be just fresh minds and win another Olympics. Because if I had the maturity, I guess, to know and see that at the time, I think that if we had done that, I think that it could have been a different story in 2014. Who knows? I guess it would have been interesting to see, because I think that we could have still possibly done that after seeing how it all went down.
Because was it pretty instant for you? Because we started the question by talking about you losing your fire. Was it pretty instant that you got it back once you hooked up with Jim and you got that feeling of being free, being with a new squad, hooking up with a guy you'd wanted to play with before in Jim. Was it pretty instant, or did it take a while still?
Well, what was great about with playing with those guys is they were like, good. They're all I knew them enough from playing on tour that they were all really open-minded, awesome guys, positive guys, and knew that, because I got some interesting. I got a call from Brad. I got a call from Epping, because there was, to play that year together, and even though there might have been on paper better options, I was.
Which Brad?
I'll let you guess that one, Colin. But I knew, when before this call went down, I sort of knew in the back of my mind, I had a conversation, that I feel like, it's my time to play with Jimmy. And I felt like I love a good challenge, and I felt like if I can be part of this experience with these guys, that where they go from, I don't know what they're ranked in the world or Canada, I think probably top 20 somewhere, to be number one in Canada and to represent our country at the Olympics and win an Olympic gold, that would have been, to me, and that's very motivating for me. And I knew, like, I am the core of this, and I took that on, and I was really determined training that year. Not that I wasn't maybe before, like I've always, again, loved training, but there was just more gumption, I guess, in my training. And I felt like, I really felt motivated and determined. And I felt like, this was a great challenge that I wanted to take on full on. And I knew no one would believe that we could do this. And the fact that we almost did, that would have been the coolest moment of my career, is being able to get a championship for Jim Cotter after him coming so close, and with that team, that would have been right up there with as good as it gets.
Fair enough. And so then obviously you hooked up with Jim again for the last couple of years, and so you had a chance to do that again. And you and I actually talked on the phone about this a little bit, but we'll skip ahead now to kind of this last year you had. Kind of your sort of what you've described to me as maybe your last shot at it, in as far as being a part of a fours men's team. So what happened there? Talk me through this year a little bit, because I know, you said to me that it was tough in some ways because of, bringing a fifth person onto the team and all that kind of stuff. What was the difference maybe between 2013 and 2018 as far as playing with that group of guys?
Well, I can tell you this. I'm 39 years old. I've played on tour for over 20 years, and you always learn new things, and you have to be open to learning new things. And I learned one of the best lessons in the game this year and in the sport. And, we'd played our previous couple of years, our team with Jim Cotter was with Jimmy and Tyrell and Rick. And, after playing with Jules and Kevin, and, it was, I always wanted to get better and better. And we looked at the stats, we had a pretty decent year 2 years ago. We won a Grand Slam. And we were,
right on the cusp at the Briar.
Yeah, close at the Briar. I don't think we made the playoffs, but to me, in my competitive mindset, I felt like, although we had a good year, we were losing consistently to the teams we had to beat in order to make the Olympics. And that was Brad Jacobs. I don't think we beat Brad Jacobs once, but he had us probably 6 or 7 times. Kevin Cooey. Maybe not so much Cooey as much as like a Brad Goosh, who had us pretty good. And I felt those were the main, and Mike McEwen, like those were the main contenders to win the trials. And I felt like those were the teams we had to beat. And I felt like we weren't there. We weren't at that stage where we could beat those guys yet. So, and then again, this is probably the business side of me that had been created in me through years of playing with Kevin Martin, was how do we create a team that can beat these teams? And I was looking at the stats, and I felt like our front end, as much as I love them as brothers, is that we were getting beaten in the front end position at lead and second. And in order for us, and the way the game is now, with the way sweeping's gone in the last few years, and the way that like 1 tick shot or 2 tick shots or whatever. Like there's every player on that team, you need 90% more out of them. And I found like we were down, some 5% or more at those positions. And so as hard as it was, I called Jimmy up and I said, Jimmy, and I think we have to bolster our front end in order for us to make a serious run at the Olympics. And that's the goal of our team. It's not to win BC. It's not to, be top 10 on tour. When we put this team together, it was to win the Olympics. And we came so close back in 2013. And when we talked about it again, it was okay, let's get one step further. So that was the goal of this team. And, so that was a really, really tough decision. I remember talking to Jimmy, and I had to convince him, Jimmy is such a reliable, loyal person, and he played with Rick Sawatsky for years, and Ty, for not as many years, but still, had played together for quite some time. And it wasn't necessarily, I have to say, it wasn't necessarily Rick Sawatsky or we wanted to move. It was, we needed to bolster the front end position, and we felt that it could have, if there was a natural fit, at second, it might have been that position, right? It wasn't like, it wasn't based on who we were better friends with or none of that. It was based on where do we have a hole in our team and where do we have to improve. And it was strictly a decision made for the betterment of our team to make the Olympics. And at the time, I thought that, okay, this move by moving Tyrell down, because he struggled a little bit with his peels and his big weight. He's a smaller guy, and I felt that, okay, if he doesn't have to do that anymore and he can just focus on sweeping and throwing draws, then that would take out an aspect of his game he wouldn't have to worry about, and he'd hopefully become a dominant lead. Okay, so that was the thinking there by moving Tyrell down. And the thought, and because his sweeping, his strength was, he was always a very, pretty strong and good, one of our best sweepers. So, and then we, the fact that we had the chance of bringing Catlin Schneider. Okay, so I'm seeing Catlin Schneider. He's just ultra through at the Brier, moving him down to play second, which is essentially an easier position. Would be, this could be epic. We might have one of the best. All of a sudden we might go from maybe one of the top 10 front ends to number 1 or 2 front end. That's what I'm thinking, right? So we made this decision, and it was really tough. I know it was like really tough on Jim and obviously Ty and Rick. And I felt like it hurt my heart to do it. It really did. And what I learned, because our year was disappointing. It was the things I thought would come to fruition didn't. And a few things I learned. One thing was that Rick Sawatsky was maybe he wasn't the strongest sweeper, and maybe he wasn't a 95% shooter, but the intangibles that he brought, which were, his savviness and his experience as a sweeper, he might not be, the best technique, but his was really good for Jim, and also brought a lot to our team, a lot of calmness to our team that we missed. Okay. And also, the effect that it had on Jimmy specifically, probably Ty too, but losing a guy like Rick, I think it ate away at him a bit, and was tough. As tough as it was on me, it was tougher on Jim because he'd played with Rick for so long. And I think that's one thing I really learned from that decision that this year was that sometimes teams that look great on paper, it's not worth possibly losing a friendship over and changing other intangibles like team chemistry and experience and friendships. And that's something that, as much as one of the great things that came about it was we developed a great friendship with Catlin. But we had a disappointing year, and it was something that, I really, one of my few regrets, I guess, in my career was making that decision, because I think that, looking back on it, we barely won a game. And and obviously if we'd kept our team intact, we would have won more games than what we did by making that change. And, I really feel bad about that. And I know that, it was a decision, it had some good merit, I guess. And it had some good, there were some the goals were right, but it's something that I really sort of wish could have went back and not made that decision. And I think probably we might not have probably wouldn't have won the trials, but maybe I still would have won the mixed doubles, and it would have been that team would have had a better finish to it.
Mixed doubles. You brought it up. Let's finish with that because
on a more positive note.
On a more positive note, let's finish up with that because obviously that was a great, kind of a great thing that spun out of that. You kind of, obviously you won the gold medal, the first ever in the Olympics for mixed doubles. Walk me through comparing the two gold medals you have, 2010, 2018, because I have to think it must have been a very different feeling in 2018, if not for any other reason than you and Caitlin just became a team like 2 months before you won. Can you compare those feelings? And is it something that was it a little bit diminished because of that, or was there a blessing because of that, or how are those two different now? Looking back on it, you're about 6 months removed from winning the mixed doubles. Can you put it into perspective at all?
Well, I have to say, after the disappointing men's season that we had, it was, to be able to have a finish to the season like that was, it really felt good because, you never like to go out on a losing note. Eh? But to compare the two Olympics, vastly different. But two amazing experiences. To go to a home games with a team that you've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in with, and to win on home soil and to really come through was amazing. I'll never. That to this day was probably for sure the best month of my life and all of our lives. I'm sure, and something we'll never forget, and it's a bond that will never break, I guess, between us. So, but 2018, it was pretty crazy, not having to play with Rachel, and we were pretty dominant in mixed doubles. I think our record was like 32-2, and so it was disappointing that, as much as I'm cheering for Rachel to win because she's been a good friend of our family for so many years, and I knew how hard they'd worked, but it was tough to see, okay, I'm losing my mixed doubles partner here.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky that Caitlin Laws was available, because if Caitlin Laws wasn't available, I really don't think I would have went to the Olympics. We wouldn't have won gold because we would, I'm not saying another team wouldn't have won gold from Canada, but I'm just saying that, she was a fantastic player. She, she had something to prove at those, she played great at those trials and she had something to prove. And I think sometimes a relationship can be better when it's short-lived, and it's almost like the honeymoon stage of when you're starting to date someone. Not saying we ever dated, Caitlin and I, right? But
yeah.
It's when you're on your best behavior, you're treating everyone with such great respect and with goal, and you're saying things that and I find that you see other relationships and teams that were married and girlfriend that were in the mixed doubles, and they'd been together for years, and you could tell they were getting under each other's skin a bit more, right? And I think that I was really lucky that Caitlin was available. I knew how much of a player and competitor she was. That's why I loved playing with her, and we gelled, I felt like, I just felt great again. I felt, mixed doubles is a sport that is pretty built for me, because it's something that, I've always felt like a well-rounded curler, as far as I can sweep half decent, I can, draw half decent, everything, and that's what I love about mixed doubles curling, is that I find, you look at the Brad Gushu team and you're like, geez, these guys are like machines now. And even if I still think I'm a great curler, I don't know if I can put together a team like that, so that's why I think mixed doubles is still curling in the raw,
yeah,
you can still have such a big influence, because you're throwing 60%, or how's my math? Yeah, 60% of the rocks in an end. You have a major influence on that game, right? But you know, maybe I'm getting a little off topic here. But that 2018 experience at those Olympics was really good. I don't know if I can compare it if it was as good as 2010, just because being able to celebrate with those guys after, and you know, it's like, okay, we worked so hard to do this, and now we did it. Whereas with Caitlin and I, we played together, and we, you know, it wasn't like we didn't work hard, because we both were dealing with she had she played through a hernia, I played through bursitis, and you know, we had some pretty significant injuries, and we were working our butts off to get through that. So we put some blood, sweat, and tears in it. It just wasn't 4 years worth of it. And so, you know, and the other thing too is, you know, we won, and the great thing about 2018, again, I like to focus on the positive. The great thing about 2018 was, after we're done, instead of being, you know, done with only 1 day left, like we were in 2010, to cheer on your teammates and to celebrate, we were done with, like, I think I had 2 weeks left. So to be able to, and she left, she went to visit her boyfriend. So I'm on my own with my, you know, family and friends. And so it was great. But you didn't have your team there to celebrate with. Right. It was sort of, you know, and when you're in the village, it's just, you know, there's no team there. It's just you. So I was hanging out with, you know, other mixed doubles curlers and other friends from other countries. But it was, that was the really unique part of it, was I was able to really enjoy the Olympics more from a fan and a perspective, and to cheer on my teammates. And that's what I really loved about it, is that I had 13, 14 days to really soak it in, and had some amazing experiences there. Got to see some things I never would have if we were playing for the entire, you know, duration, like the teams were, and the men's and women's teams were. So,
well, because in 2010 you didn't even stay in the village, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
but you guys had a house, and
so we were pretty segregated. You know, we went to the village a few times
of course.
But you know, for the most part, we were on our own there, and
that was a business trip.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So this was more, you know, it was like, okay, I got to really experience the Olympics, you know, and I went to watch my buddy Justin Cripps win gold in bobsled. I was there, like, front row center. It was the first bobsled event I've ever seen in my life live, and I got to see him win gold, and went to speed skating, and I went to, you know, some hockey games, and it was just great, because I didn't have to be home at 10 p.m. and be training every day, and be up at 8 in the morning, or, you know, 6 in the morning training, because up until that point, like, I love to be disciplined, and especially when it comes to, you know, to training. So up until that point, when I was in Korea, I was getting up. I brought a blender there. I was making smoothies every morning. I was up at 7 a.m. going for runs and working out, you know, like, and I felt I had to, like, in order for us to win, I have to be as disciplined as I can, and to be in the best mental frame of mind I can. And I knew that would get me there. Whereas now I was done. I'm like, all right, like, I don't have to wake up at 7 a.m. and train. I don't, you know, still made smoothies because I love them, but you know, it was just, I can go for a beer at the Czech house, and, you know, really, and it was just a really, you know, I was on top of the world, you know, and to have won gold, and to have felt like you come through for your country. And I didn't really know what was going on back in Canada. Like, we didn't get any media. It was blocked. Every media from North America was blocked, because it was all Asian media we got over there.
Right.
I couldn't read it or understand what they're saying. There wasn't a lot of coverage on curling except for the Korean team. So it was essentially like, okay, like, I don't have as many, you know, I did a lot of radios and stuff, and some streaming interviews, but other than that, it was just, let's enjoy. And that was the really cool part of, and I love the Asian culture. I have to say, you know, I've been to Japan the last few years, and now Korea, and I absolutely love it. The food, and the respect they have over there, the cleanliness, and so I was just taking it in as a trip, you know, that a once in a lifetime trip after that point.
Beautiful. Well, that seems like a good place to end. That on a very positive note. You're guest number 1, man. I mean, thank you for doing this. This is it's a beautiful setting. I'm glad you're here. Do you have anything? I know you're playing another mixed double season upcoming, correct?
Yeah, we've committed to 2 more years at least.
Okay, that's you and Caitlin now, or you and Rachel?
Well, with Caitlin, she's still playing with Jennifer Jones. So I want to play, you know, 7 or 8 events. We got some good sponsorship, Qualico and Scovan and Goal Line, and now Gorp has come on board. They've been great sponsors, and I don't think it'd be, you know, and I'm not sure if I have another Olympic run in me in mixed doubles. I'm not sure. I don't want to make that commitment yet. But I feel like I still want to play, and I don't want to play 3 events. I want to play 7 or 8 mixed doubles events. This mixed doubles is really gaining momentum internationally. I want to be part of that. If I can help the game grow in any way, by far, I'd love to do that. Caitlin and I are going to play at least 3 events a year. The nationals and a couple other bigger events probably in Canada. And but she's got a pretty heavy commitment with the Jones team. So understandably, I'll be playing in a few other events with some other mixed doubles partners. Which I think is going to be a good, a new experience and great experience as well. So essentially that's what I got moving forward. And
men's, you're done?
Yeah, I can't see myself playing men's again.
That's it.
We'll see. It's going to be my first year off men's to see how I'm feeling. My wife Maggie's been extremely supportive, and she said, "Listen, I don't want you at home if you're going to be miserable and not, wishing you're out there still." So, do I think I could still compete with the best of them individually? Yes, I do. I still think, I can still compete with the best of them, and I'll continue to try to prove that in mixed doubles. But as far as men's is concerned, there's maybe 1 or 2 teams out there that if I got a call from them and the timing was right and it was an offer I couldn't refuse, I would, because there's but the chance of that is minute. And, I'm happy to go out the way I did. And I think I'll still have, some sort of impact or some sort of, involvement in our sport of curling because I love it and I want to be able to give back But as far as men's is concerned, I think that's about all she wrote for me. And I guess signing out, I would just like to say thanks to all my teammates I've had over the years. I've had some fantastic teammates that I've felt honored and very grateful to have played with. I know I haven't been the best teammate at times, and I know that probably had them, pulling their hair out some points, and I appreciate their patience with me. And also wanted to thank my family and all of my sponsors throughout my career and my fans that have followed me and cheered for me through all my ups and downs. And I feel like a really lucky guy to have played this great sport and lived in a great country like Canada. And just wanted to give a heartfelt thanks to all of them.
Well, thanks, man.
Cool. Anytime.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the very first episode of Stone and Straw. That was, like I said, just an amazing chat with John. I thought he was super candid, super relaxed. I really loved a lot of the things that he had to say about his time curling and his future as a mixed doubles player. It almost kind of felt like he sort of retired from men's play on my podcast. I don't know. I mean, I'll just say that because it sounds way cooler. But thank you, everyone, for listening. Thanks to my producer, Daniel Cuzzetto. Thank you to question contributor Matt Sussman. Thank you to Graham Wright. Thank you to Dynasty. Thank you to Hardline. Thank you to everyone for just putting up with me over the last 3 months on Twitter. Like, hey, I promise it's coming out. It's coming out. Well, it's out now and we're doing it. So like I said off the top, subscribe to the show. Follow us at Stone Straw Pod. You can follow me at Cullen the Curler on Twitter. Tell your friends, leave us a nice review on iTunes. That's always really great for helping me get into their iTunes charts and maybe get on that new and noteworthy page. That'd be really sexy to do for my first few episodes. Next week, episode 2 is going to feature Chelsea Carey. I was out in Calgary over the summertime, and Chelsea was super busy just getting ready for the upcoming season, but she managed to carve out some time to sit down and talk with me. So get excited for that. That'll be coming out next Tuesday. That's myself and Chelsea Carey here on Stone Straw Pod. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next week.